Now let's come to Dube Onitiri. For the first time, a woman is leading the charge in her own right. What is the significance of that?
I don't know her, but I do know she was married to MKO Abiola. And I want to ask a question of you, my interlocutor, and our listeners. Do we really think that the Nigerian state has dealt fairly with MKO Abiola's family? If the answer is yes, then we should condemn this woman for leading the charge, however misguided it may be. But if the answer is no, then we should actually sit down and retrace our steps.
You know, I had the opportunity to have like a 3 hours discussion with her.
Indeed.
Yes, it should be about 9 years ago.
That's far back.
Yes, I went to her house somewhere in Ikeja, in Lagos. I had an interview with her, a 45 minutes interview with her. But after the interview, I wanted to know more, you know. This time the mics were in the bag. So we sat down to talk. You know, I was able to see her pain, her notion of the state, you know. So when I was watching her in that broadcast, I began to reflect on that discussion. In fact, I went back to listen to the interview. I'm not surprised. I'm not.
Well, here is the thing. There is a difference, as Nigerians, especially from the Yoruba-speaking part of Nigeria, are finding out. There's a difference between Emilokan and Awalokan. And I would say that has ramifications for aspirations such as what we have just seen. As you have pointed out, we've not actively seen a woman lead the charge in this way before. If I were to advise those in charge in Nigeria, I would say be very careful. Because when you go through history, whether it is European history, Asian history, Latin American history, even African history, anytime a woman is involved, the temptation is to think that you can dismiss what you just witnessed as inconsequential. It will be a horrible mistake. That is the lesson of history. The Romans found out with Boudica in what we now call Britain. The Roman machine swept through Europe, went as far as Asia, in fact came to Africa. For one woman in Britain, which is in the heart of Europe, said, I think we have to put a stop to this thing. And she succeeded. So I would say that the Nigerian state needs to be very careful. Again, we saw what a woman did in the state of Israel. There has been no leader like Golda Meir since. There is a certain element that they bring that I'm afraid the male figures don't have. It's one thing for a man to send his sons to war. It's quite a different thing for a woman to send her children to war.
What's the difference?
The difference is that men tend to be flippant about it. But women are never flippant about sending. They are the ones that bore the pains. They know. You know that the Yoruba culture, just like the Roman culture or the Greek culture, have certain similarities. One of those similarities is that before men go to war, they do something. They consult old, experienced women. Of course, they have different names for those women. Some people call them seers, some call them witches, whatever name you want to call it. But this is the practice in Greek culture. This is the practice in Roman culture. This is the practice in Yoruba culture. You know why? It goes back to that thing that a woman is likely to tell you bold, plain truth. Are you going to succeed? She's going to tell you. Are you going to fail? She's going to tell you. And again, the biggest temptation is to say, nothing will come out of this.
You can see the way she's dressed here in white. You know, the calmness on her face. And declaring a state out of a state. And kept, yeah, Dube, what are you up to? Even when she had told us what she's up to. What is the power of a woman?
It goes back to what I just said. The temptation is always to dismiss this as some kind of fringe activity by somebody who does not know what she's doing. But again, history tells us that by the time a woman is involved, how many public demonstrations has been arranged in Nigeria, has been organized in Nigeria prior to EndSARS? You know what made EndSARS different?
What?
The number of young women involved in the planning and leadership of that particular movement. So for the first time, you had the New York Times put Nigerian protesters on its front page. They are able to network in ways that men and boys are not able to, because you don't know to whom they are connected. Like I said, if I were to be the one advising those in charge in Nigeria, I would say be very careful.
Now, this is a woman who married a rich man.
Mm-hmm.
One of the richest men in Africa.
She herself comes from a background of privilege.
The Oyo State government has gone to demolish her house in Ibadan because the house, according to the government, was used for separatist activities. What do you think about that?
You see, this fire brigade approach to serious issues has to stop. If you destroy a building by a poor person, then you have inflicted damage, right? It will take a while. But if you do the same to a rich person, a wealthy person, you actually have done nothing other than to swing sympathy towards her, because a lot of Nigerians cannot afford to build a house of their own right now. So they put themselves in her shoes and say, to those who went to execute that order, they want to show an example to the people that this is what will happen if we find you in the camp of sympathizers of this kind of movement. But in reality, what has simply happened is that a lot of people who will not come to commiserate with her openly are sympathizing with her position. And if before now they did not know who she was, they want to find out who she is. So again, this is a chance for the leadership, for the political leadership in Nigeria to show more brain than brawn. You can bring down a whole town. Some past heads of state in Nigeria have done that. But has that ever stopped anything from happening? No. And there's a reason why. The Yoruba people, remember, are known for how long they can hold a grievance. They fought a 30-year internecine war amongst themselves. 30 years. So this to them is really nothing.
From her brokers, she has committed treason, right?
The lawyers will say prima facie. On the face of it.
Okay.
On the face of it, a separatist declaration is treasonable. There are mechanics, there are elements of legality that are involved. I am no longer a player in that field. I used to be a prosecutor. are no longer a player in that field. And if the state wants, let them go ahead and do what they think the state should do. But if I were to advise, I would say proceed with an abundance of caution.